the ground situation in Kathmandu is concerned. The army has been called out, which you can see on your television screen as well. We also have Pratibha Tuladhar, senior journalist. She joins us from Kathmandu. Pratibha, if you can give us a ringside view of what you're witnessing right now, where are the protests headed? Are things in control?
We saw a really dark day, I would say, in the history of Nepal. If you look at the history of Nepal in terms of the street protests that happen every couple of years and how that leads to a change in government, we've seen so many of these street protests that have had major implications in terms of what happens to the political situation of Nepal. But in terms of what we saw today, the public is furious because we've never seen this form of violence before, especially the kind that's been meted out to school students and students who were in uniform, students who were going to college, who were some of them protesting in school uniforms. And as you might have seen in the footages that were rolled out on different media platforms all day today, the protests began quite early in the morning at around 9 a.m. Some of them were in their uniforms, of course, and they came together based on this call on social media because that's the form that's been like most effective across the world, right? That's how we organize people now. We organize people over social media now, and that's been the trend all over the world. And we saw that trend take the form of the protest that happened today as well. So all these young people went out on the streets to protest, and they were hoping, they said, that it was going to be a peaceful protest. But of course, situation got out of hand, as we've seen during the day.
All right,
And
the situation, yes. Go ahead.
And curfew has been clamped down in different parts of the city. And of course, in some places of the city, there was defiance of curfew. And that was because
Right.
protesters said that they were not aware that the curfew had been clamped down because they were already out on the streets and they didn't really,
Right.
they were not aware. So yes, and then
Pratibha, I'm going to come right back to you, and I want to get a larger understanding, because is the government looking at negotiating, and if they do negotiate with the protesting crowds, who are they negotiating it, with? Because there doesn't seem to be anyone or any organization spearheading these protests against the government. I want to just, stay with me. I want to cut across to Pankaj Das, who's been reporting from the ground in Nepal. Pankaj, क्या सेंस है जो ग्राउंड सिचुएशन है अभी? क्या थिंग्स अभी अंडर कंट्रोल है या अभी भी टेंस सिचुएशन बनी हुई है?
बिल्कुल भी कंट्रोल में नहीं है। और जो ये प्रदर्शन है, ये पहले पार्लियामेंट हाउस के आसपास सिर्फ सीमित था, लेकिन काठमांडू के कई इलाकों में फैल गया है और कई इलाकों से खबर आ रही है कि वहाँ पे पुलिस के साथ प्रदर्शनकारियों की झड़प जारी है। काठमांडू का जो न्यू रोड का इलाका है, जो सिंधारा का इलाका है, यहाँ का मेन सेंट्रल आर्मी हेडक्वार्टर वहीं पर है। इन जगहों से भी खबर आ रही है कि वहाँ पे पुलिस और प्रदर्शनकारी के बीच इस समय झड़प चल रही है। साथ ही पुलिस ने वहाँ के जो हॉस्पिटल है, नेशनल ट्रॉमा सेंटर, जहाँ पे कई डेड बॉडी अभी भी रखी हुई है और कई सारे जो घायल प्रदर्शनकारी हैं उनको वहाँ पर ले जाया गया है। वहाँ पर हॉस्पिटल के भीतर पुलिस ने लाठीचार्ज किया है। इसी तरह सिविल हॉस्पिटल के बाहर भी और वहाँ पे पुलिस ने टीयर गैस छोड़ा है और वहाँ पे कई डॉक्टर जो है, जो इमरजेंसी में थे, इमरजेंसी में वहाँ पे जाके वो हुआ है। तो इस जो स्थिति आउट ऑफ कंट्रोल हो रही है, न सिर्फ काठमांडू में बल्कि काठमांडू के बाहर कई शहरों से ये खबर आ रही है कि वहाँ भी गोलियां चली है। इस हरी में तो 2 लोग के मारे जाने की खबर है। जो प्राइम मिनिस्टर का होम डिस्ट्रिक्ट है ढाका, वहाँ पर भी दमक में 3 लोग गोली लगने से घायल हो गए हैं। और कई सारे शहरों में कर्फ्यू लगा दिया गया है। नेपाल के भैरवा में, बुटवल में, इस तरह से तमाम शहरों में कर्फ्यू लगा दिया गया है। एहतियात के तौर पर सरकार ने 2 दिनों तक स्कूल कॉलेज को ऐसे शहरों में जहाँ प्रदर्शन हो रहे हैं वहाँ उनको स्कूलों को बंद कर दिया गया है। सारे पॉलिटिकल पार्टी जो है उनके ऑफिस की सुरक्षा बढ़ा दी गई है, क्योंकि सरकार को आशंका है कि ये प्रदर्शनकारी हो सकता है कि रात में या कल सुबह उनका जो निशाना हो वो ये पॉलिटिकल जो पार्टी के दफ्तर है वो हो, और सभी बड़े नेताओं की सुरक्षा भी अभी बढ़ा दी गई है।
पंकज, अभी तक जो फेटालिटीज हैं, 20 आर किल्ड, Many are seriously injured, Pankaj. पर कोई समाधान अभी निकल के आ रहा है या नहीं आ रहा है? कोई आउटफिट है जिससे सरकार बात कर सके? क्योंकि ये पूरा एक ऑर्गेनिक प्रोटेस्ट सा लग रहा है कि कोई एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन नहीं है, कोई आउटफिट नहीं है, कोई स्टूडेंट विंग नहीं है. सरकार बात करे तो किससे करे?
जी बिल्कुल, ये सरकार के लिए बहुत बड़ी मुश्किल है कि वो किससे बात करे, किसके साथ बातचीत करके समाधान का रास्ता ढूंढे। दूसरी बात ये भी है कि सरकार इस समय यहाँ पे ये थर्ड मेजोरिटी की सरकार है। अगर एक दिन के प्रोटेस्ट से सरकार को वापस अपने डिसीजन को लेना पड़ा तो ये भी सरकार के लिए बहुत ही खराब सिचुएशन होने वाला है, क्योंकि ये इसके बाद एक ये बन जाएगा, एक एग्जाम्पल बन जाएगा कि इस तरह के प्रोटेस्ट करो और सरकार को झुका दे, क्योंकि सरकार ने एक घंटे में जैसे जिस तरह से आर्मी को डिप्लॉय कर दिया, उससे लग गया कि सरकार के कंट्रोल से सब कुछ बाहर हो रहा है। तो सरकार के लिए बहुत ही इस समय गंभीर स्थिति है कि वो क्या करे। वो अगर डिसीजन वापस लेती है तो भी सरकार की किरकिरी होने वाली है, और डिसीजन वापस नहीं लेते ये मामला और ज्यादा आगे बढ़ने वाला है।
बने रहिए पंकज हमारे साथ. I want to go back to Pratibha Tuladhar. Pratibha, you know what seemingly is an organic protest where students and the youth joining in from all spheres, making it difficult, to hold a conversation or a dialogue to end the protest. But the NGO Hami Nepal was the one which was behind most of these protests. Is there any initiation to build a dialogue that maybe things can then be stemmed in terms of what we are witnessing?
So what we've heard so far is that the government has called for an emergency meeting and they're trying to look into what the next steps can be. But it also feels like they've waited too long for this emergency meeting to take place, because it has been a very violent and sad day already. And of course, as you spoke to Pankaj earlier on as well, and as he shared, it's really difficult to hold meetings with like one group particularly, because this has been an organic protest. And we've seen this across Nepal. Youth from across Nepal have come forward on their own, but of course there have also been reports of infiltration, which is something that we have been witnessing in protests in the past as well. And so there have been talks of infiltration. And so, of course, at this point, it's hard for the government to, as they're saying, ask for like a particular group to come and talk to them. But I think it's also important for the government to understand at this point, especially when the human rights sector and the opposition are already calling for the resignation of the prime minister. It's important for the government to understand that this is something that is not about a particular group of people, but it's about the youth of Nepal who are calling for a change and end to corruption and to nepotism, so that there can be some form of security for them, job security, and a lot of these issues that have been unresolved, and that issues that the government has been unresponsive towards, that's been building up over the years.
True.
And that's something the government needs to address at this point.
The social media clampdown only seemed to be a trigger, Pratibha,
Exactly,
because it seems to be multiple issues that have been piling on, and the result is what we've seen in terms of an explosion where street protest is concerned. Stay with me. I'd like to go back to Pankaj. He's been reporting from ground, getting us the latest. Pankaj, जो हम डिस्कस यही चीज़ कर रहे हैं कि देखिए ये जो सोशल मीडिया क्लैम्पडाउन है ये एक सिर्फ ट्रिगर है, इसके पीछे करप्शन के इश्यूज हैं, बहुत सारे और मुद्दे हैं जो एंटी इनकम्बेंसी नेपाल के जो प्रधानमंत्री हैं उनके अगेंस्ट. इन सब के दायरे में अगर हम बात करें तो ये प्रोटेस्ट अभी खत्म नहीं होने वाला है, लगता है और इंटेंसिफाई होगा. पंकज, आपके लिए था ये सवाल. पंकज, कैन यू हियर मी? Okay. I think there's a problem with the audio line where Pankaj is concerned. We're going to try and rebuild that audio line. But viewers, I just want to give you the backdrop. The backdrop clearly is with what is being reported, and it is where the Gen Z, thousands of youth of Nepal coming out on the streets protesting against what is a digital clampdown, a clampdown on social media, where they are protesting against it. The government says it's a regulatory issue. All these companies need to register with the ministry, and they haven't quite done so. But there is, something bigger in the offing, which clearly this latest flashpoint has proven to be just a trigger. I want to bring in my colleague Pranay, who's joining us for more on this. Pranay, there are a number of issues which have now exploded on the streets of Kathmandu, with the trigger being the social media clampdown.
Actually, the social media clampdown or social media ban has become a point here, Preeti. But definitely, there were grievances. There were grievances regarding corruption. There were grievances regarding the unemployment, the grievances regarding the management, the fiscal management of the Nepal exchequer. There are many issues, and we have seen the indications of these, this growing anger among the Nepalese population in terms of bringing back the monarchy or the removal of the electricity commission chief. In the recent past, in last 4-5 months, we have seen many such protests. But the way it became the rallying point, you see the methodology chosen by the KP Sharma Oli government to ban these social media platforms by virtue of bringing an ordinance. That is also a bone of contention, because many people think that he should have brought in via the cabinet approval, which he didn't choose. He brought the ordinance. The parliament approval was not taken in terms of bringing out such kind of a ban. More so, this indeed became a rallying point. But definitely, it cannot be ignored, the fact that the anger was growing in Nepal. The KP Sharma Oli government did not pay attention to the growing anger as well. And if you see it has been 4 days. Last week, they have put ban on these 26 social media platforms. After that, there have been grievances. There have been reports. There have been protests as well. And the call was given. What did KP Sharma Oli government do? Why did the government allowed to escalate situation to go to this level? And why there were no security deployment to maintain the law and order in the situation? Why did they allow it to spread to the other parts of Nepal as well? So somewhere definitely they have failed. And meanwhile, at a time, you see the situation here, Preeti, that there has been no official statement by the government of Nepal so far. It's been over 5 hours. This rampage and this protest is going in Kathmandu and various other cities of Nepal. Army has been deployed in Nepal, but there is no official statement by the government of Nepal as yet.
All right, Pranay, stay on with me. I'm joined right now by Alina Acharya. She's a journalist with, in Nepal. We're going to just try and get her organization. But Alina, appreciate you joining us. Very quick take on what you're witnessing on ground. What we're looking at while we're sitting here. It seems to be a massive protest where the social media clampdown is concerned, but there's larger backdrop behind it.
Okay, so at first, on the September 4th, Nepal's government had officially declared that 26 social media, which were not officially registered in Nepal, government declared to ban it. But most of the medias and most of the people, they are saying that this Gen protest that has been happening today in Kathmandu majorly, it's not just because of the ban of social media. As we can see that different protests have been happening all around the world by changes for different changes, and this is one of that. So, on my concern, before also on the other social medias like TikToks and others, the activities, exactly against, or let's say about the activities that has been done by government is against this Gen Z generation has been doing campaign about it. The after social media ban, it has taken a vital place, but it's not just about today moment, but also about the before campaigns that overall Gen Z's generation have been planning, I think. And as all of us, we know that almost more than 20 protesters have been killed, and 300 plus are injured, and their treatment are going in various hospitals in Nepal. And we have, if we see the banners and the placards in the protest, we can see that it's not just particularly about the social media ban, but also
Right.
about against corruption. If we see those banners and the campaign
It's unemployment, it's
that
corruption, it's
focuses.
everything rolled into one. Just stay on with me, Alina. I'm going to come right back to you. I want to bring in I want to bring in Pratibha Tuladhar as well. We also have Pranay, who's with us. But Pratibha, you know, the larger question in all of this, we'd seen similar scenes play out in Bangladesh as well. Of course, the protest at that time wasn't completely something different, but what it warranted later on was a regime change. Are you looking at maybe that be the larger goal of this protest?
I don't think I'm really in a position to make predictions here. But then if we go by the history of these street protests in Nepal, we've always seen that every time there's been a major show like this on the streets, the regime has toppled, right? And we've just seen that the public is really furious at the moment, and we've seen calls for resignation of the prime minister. And we've already waited the entire day for some form of statement or response from the government, which we still haven't seen. And these are not good indications for the government, because if there is this growing anger that is not being addressed on time, then it does mean that it is going to have negative repercussions for the government, and it's not going to augur well for the government. And I think that is something we've got to wait and watch and see. But going by the trend of how Nepal's political protests have worked in the past, it does seem that unless the government takes an action now, or takes an action and makes a response, then it's definitely not
Ready?
going
The
to go
question
well
is,
for the government.
and maybe if we have Pankaj Das still with us, is it too late already? Because there are already 20, you know, who have been killed, over 25 here are critically injured, where you've had, you know, the administration open fire, live ammunition. So in respect of all of that, and Alina, would you want to take that question? Is it already too late for the government?
It's a pretty diplomatic question, because the incidents, actually government, I think in my concern, government was not really prepared for this. As if we hear the past news and the past, the statements of ministers and the prime minister as well, they were not planning, or they were not expecting this to be this brutal. But I think the many have lost their lives, and it's really inhuman, and it's against the human rights as well. Most of the generation, they were as we seen that on the videos and the scenario, most of them were students. They were wearing school uniforms. They were wearing college uniforms. It's really brutal, but I think a government should really be conscious, be really serious. It might took this action in a completely difficult way for government, as well as Pratibha mentioned. I think this is the time to take action, to take serious communication about this protest.
All right, I want to just cut across to Pranay, and then we're going to, Pranay, I want you to come in because things are clearly very, very serious, critical. The government hasn't come up with a response. What the government has actually done in Nepal is open fire, where 20 young lives are gone, many seriously injured, critically is what we've been given to understand. Pranay, juxtapose this with what we had seen in Bangladesh, our other neighboring country. A, how is India watching the developments in Nepal? And B, does it somewhere down the line for someone who's covered so many of these conflicts internationally augur the movement towards a regime change?
Definitely, there seems to be a pattern here, Preeti, and we cannot overlook that. And definitely, India has its own concern because with Nepal, we share an open border. Therefore, the Ministry of Home Affairs has, already put SSB, which is the guarding force on the Indo-Nepal border, on high alert and to watch situation. The government of India in Ministry of External Affairs, as well as Indian Embassy in Kathmandu, is also monitoring the situation. But having said that, I also want to mention about the larger issue here, because the management management of the social media or the regulation of the social media content has become a new challenge for the democratic government. On one side, we have to ensure the freedom of expression, but on the other side, we also have to regulate the content. And on the other side, if you see how these tech giants, how these big tech companies are behaving, you would recall, Preeti, that how the Indian government had to put pressure on Twitter and bring them to compliance to the parliamentary committee as well for the sake of compliance. And recently, few years ago, Government of India brought the IT guidelines and asked these companies to comply.
But Pranay, fair point. You're making a strong point there because there have to be guidelines, and whatever the organization is, they need to register and comply with the country's rules. But having said that, is it just the tip of the iceberg? Because a protest like that, just on the basis of a social media clampdown, looks rather improbable, because this seems to be a snowballing of multiple issues and then exploding on the streets of Kathmandu. Word just coming in, and we're going to try and get a confirmation right now, because with what we've been discussing on the possibility of what we are witnessing on the streets of Kathmandu is a push towards regime change. The first indication is already coming in. And we're going to break that news in just a minute, because it does seem that the Nepal Home Minister has actually offered to resign. Nepal's Home Minister Ramesh Lekhak has offered to resign from his post in the Nepali Congress office bearers meeting, which we had informed our viewers a short while ago, because there has been a meeting, an emergency meet by the Nepal government. The Home Minister, taking moral responsibility, has offered to step down. But will that be enough? Home Minister Lekhak is currently attending the cabinet meeting. All of this in the backdrop of 20 young live students that were killed in today's incident. Opposition parties demanding the resignation of the Prime Minister. But what we've been given to understand that in that meeting, Ramesh Lekhak has actually offered to resign. Will that resignation quell the protests and somewhere down the line douse the anger that we are witnessing in Kathmandu by the Gen Z or youth, with thousands of them taking to the streets? Let's cut across back to our guests right now. All right, so Pratibha Tuladhar still continues to be with us. Pratibha, the Home Minister offering to resign right now in that meeting that you were speaking of, will that be enough in terms to quell the anger that we see on the streets?
With the Home Minister announcing the resignation, with the public eye right now, this could also be seen as perhaps he is also just being made the scapegoat for something the entire government has to take responsibility for. Because is that enough to quell the protests or to address the death of almost 2,000 young people, but also dozens of others who are critically injured and are now waiting in hospital to get treatment because the hospitals are flooded as well.
So you're thinking it's practically... Yeah, will that be enough is a question that, of course, will need to be answered in days to come. But Alina, would you want to weigh in on this breaking news coming? Go ahead. Make your point. Make your point.
I was also just saying that even if this protest ends with the move that the government has currently made, it's not going to be a long-term solution, because if the government really wants to address it, there has to be more that's put in place. And that will not be enough.
Fair point. Alina Acharya, what's your view? The Home Minister now offering his resignation, taking moral responsibility for 20 young students and lives that have been lost in the protest. Do you think that would be enough somewhere down the line, at least right now, to quell the kind of anger that we are seeing boiling over on the streets of Kathmandu?
I think it's a very inhuman activities that government had done, and we are in democracy. As a constitution of Nepal clearly mentions about the freedom of speech, and the activities that has been happened today, I think it's really crucial. It's completely inhuman, and the resignation is just not enough for it. They have lost their lives. Their father and mother have lost their children.
Fair point. It's just not enough. But do you think the protesters will buy it right now, Alina, at least for now? Will that be enough to douse their anger?
I think it's a very diplomatic and critical situation to say anything, because we don't we don't have the particular leader leading this. And Genji,
Yes, it's an organic
in her,
protest. There's not one person. Who
yeah,
does the government speak with? Who does the government talk to? I want to get in a quick
exactly.
word from Pranay before we go into a break. Pranay, would you want to come in? Because, if you just mirror it with the developments we'd seen in Bangladesh, of course, very, very different issues. But Bangladesh ultimately resulted in a regime change. And here, once again, an organic protest, which clearly turning political. Who do you speak with? Multiple units involved.
You're absolutely right, Preeti. We see a pattern here because what happened in Bangladesh, student-led protest, which turned into a regime change game. We have seen similar kind of a protest a few years ago in Colombo as well, which led to the regime change there. So there seems to be a pattern of regime change, through these protests, whether they are self-induced protests or someone has induced these protests. We do not know, but definitely the ultimate aim or objective is regime change, and these protests are being used as tool. We do not know, but definitely what is happening in Nepal and in Kathmandu, the way it is being handled, with the use of force, with the use of the army and bullets, this is definitely not the way you handle the protest, and especially your own people. When you force your own armed forces to fire upon your own individual, your own citizens, then definitely it is a recipe for disaster, and which often leads to regime change.